so in this diagram here, what we're going to be discussing is the annual grass growth curve, and then how we can plan in our calving dates for when we want our cows or sheep to start calving. So what this diagram is showing here is our months of the year on the bottom, and then the grass growth rate here along this axis. So in January, February we have very slow growth, and then it gradually increases up into a peak growth in April, May, early June, drops off during the summer slump, and then we get another peak of growth in kind of September, October time before it drops off for the rest of the year again. So the reason this is important is we want to plan out when our animals are going to calve in relation to the amount of feed we have available. So it wouldn't make sense really to start calving say on the 1st of January because our grass isn't growing yet, so we'd have to supplement all those animals with very expensive purchased in feed. So if we calve too early, say January or even late December time, the problems we run into with calving date here is initially the weather. So we have a high risk of very cold weather depending on what part of the country we're in. We could get frostbite on calves if they're not attended to very quickly. So the labour aspect of calving very early is also a factor. So basically we have to have people watching cows pretty much 24/7 if we're going to be calving in very poor weather, just to make sure that the calves are okay, or if they get cold or start to get hypothermia, we'd have to bring them into a barn, heat them up. There's a lot of extra work there. The feed element, as we mentioned already, is very important. So our cows, if they're calving in January time, are going to require huge amounts of feed. So a cow that has calved, it requires 30% more feed, 30% more energy than a cow that is in mid-pregnancy. So that's an important factor to consider as well. Another possibility of setting up our calving dates is to calve too late. So in a spring calving situation, calving too late would be say in around here. So if we started around late May, early June, this isn't ideal for a couple of reasons. The main reason is we didn't use our spring growth flush. So during all this period when we have really good top quality grass been grown, our cows are in a relatively unproductive stage of mid-pregnancy. So then we're having cows calving here in late May. When they have an increase in demand for feed is when we're going into our summer slump. So we're not matching our feed demand with our grass demand. The other factor then to consider is that our intake demand is going to be 30% less during this period of time when our cows are in mid-pregnancy before they start to calve here in late May. So the amount of grass we're going to be able to consume off the farm is less. Because of that, the grass is going to grow a lot taller, get stemmier, lose quality, and then when we need good quality feed after our cows have started calving, we have poor quality grass ahead of them because we didn't manage our grass correctly in the springtime. So the just right time, the correct time for calving in a spring calving system is to calve a little bit earlier than you'll have peak grass demand, or peak grass growth I should say. So for us here in Ohio, we're going to have very good growth, say mid-April, late April into early May. So for us, our ideal calving period is going to be about 6 weeks ahead of that time. In around mid to late March is when we want to start calving. The benefits here all come back to the amount of demand that we're going to have from our cows. So when we start cows calving here, as they get hungrier and increase their feed demand each week after calving, our grass growth is matching that demand. So if we initially say our demand here with our cows in late March, every week after that for the next 6 weeks they're going to get slightly hungrier and eat about 2.5 pounds more grass per week. But at each stage along, as the animal's getting hungrier and hungrier at each week, our grass growth is matching that demand, so we don't have to supplement them with expensive feed that's going to be bought in. The other benefit then as well is that our cows are going to be ready for breeding before the very hot late July, August period. So that gives us better opportunity to get cows back in calf before the main summer heat comes and heat stress starts to occur. The other main benefit as well of calving at the right time is that we're going to maintain the grass quality by having enough demand on the farm to keep our residuals at a good level and not letting the grass explode and lose quality on the farm. Another factor to consider when we're talking about calving dates and breeding dates is our goal at all times is to have one calf per cow per year. So we want our cow calving generally in roughly the same month of the year and the same time period every year. So if we have a cow that calves on March 1st this year, ideally we want her calving in around like March 1st, March 5th, March 10th, in around that time period every year. What happens occasionally with cows is that they'll slip and lose months. So if she calves on March 1st this year, but she doesn't calve till April 1st the following year, and then say she loses another 30 days the following year, she's into May 1st. Over time here, she's gradually slipping down the calving pattern, and if she continues to do that, she's going to end up as an empty cow. If we have our breeding window set at 10 weeks, if she gradually falls through the system, by the time she's at her 4th calving period, she's going to be too late in the calving window and she's not going to have enough time to actually get pregnant. So she's going to be an empty and she's going to be culled from the herd. So whatever date she starts off calving as a first timer, say if that's the 1st of March, we want to keep her as close to that as possible. To give ourselves the best chance of having as many cows staying in this area and not slipping through the system, we want to have the majority of our herd calving as fast as possible to give them time to recover in time before the breeding period starts. So the targets we have, and these have been proven by research in various countries around the world, in a grazing system we want 50% of the herd calved within the first 14 days of our calving period. So if we're starting on March 1st, for example, we want half the number of cows we have on the farm to be finished calving by the 14th of March. This gives them a huge amount of time to recover and get ready for breeding period. So the benefits of getting everything tight and compact on the farm is that we have less groups of animals. So if we have 50% of the cows calved in 2 weeks, that means we have half the herd in one big group and all their calves are similar age. It's one group to manage. We don't have to be splitting them into smaller groups. The calves are all the same size for vaccinations. They can get, if they need worm doses, they get worm treatments at the same time. And when we come to weaning and potentially selling our calves in the fall time, our calves are going to be bigger. The earlier born calves are obviously going to be bigger than the late born calves. South Dakota research states that every day of life, extra day of life we can get into our calves is worth about 2.4 pounds of live weight gain to us at the fall time of the year. So a March 1st born calf is going to be roughly 60 pounds heavier than an April 1st born calf, and because of that he's a lot more valuable and profitable to the farm. The other point, as we mentioned then, is that our cows have adequate time to recover and build back up body nutrition or body condition score before breeding time. So our initial target is 50% in 2 weeks, 70% in the first 3 weeks of breeding, or first 3 weeks of calving, I should say. This brings us down then to our breeding period. So how we get to this position here of having 50% calved in 2 weeks and 70% in 3 weeks comes back to the previous year's breeding period. Obviously, if our cows aren't pregnant, they can't calve the following year. So we want as many as possible to be bred and pregnant as fast as possible during the breeding cycle. So our targets here for the first 21 days of breeding is to get 95% of the herd submitted and eligible to be bred. Out of that 95%, we want 70% of those to actually stay pregnant and conceive, and that'll give us about a 30% return rate that will need to be bred again later in the breeding cycle. So down here, we just have a timeline going through calving, going into breeding. So on this example here, we're starting later in calving, so we're starting March 23rd is our very first day of calving. So this is the first cow that calves on the farm starting on March 21st. This is a 10-week calving period followed by the 10-week breeding period. If we have a cow that calves very early here in the calving period, she has 6 weeks to recover before she starts to naturally have her first heat cycle. So cows generally need about 42 days, provided they're healthy and in decent condition, to start cycling again after calving. So if she calves the end of March, by the first week of May, she's naturally starting to cycle again. So she'll have one silent heat in early May, and then in late May she'll have a second strong full heat where potentially she could be ready to conceive if there was a bull present or if AI was being used. In this situation here, for calving in late May, we're going to start breeding on June 1st to keep our dates consistent year over year. So we can see that this cow has an excellent chance of actually getting pregnant here in early June, because she's already had 2 natural heats occurring. So by the time she gets into the breeding window here in the first 3 weeks of breeding in June, it's going to be her 3rd heat, and usually heats get stronger and you have a better chance of conception with every heat that a cow has. The other consideration then is if we look at, say, a poor quality cow or a later calving cow. So let's pick a cow here that's going to calve for the first time on May 11th. So if this cow calves on May 11th, it's going to take her 6 weeks before she has her first natural cycle. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks. So this later calving cow in May isn't starting to cycle naturally until the 22nd of June. Okay? The issue here is that has very little window of opportunity in the breeding period to actually get pregnant again. Because she started so late calving, she's not ready to start conceiving again until pretty much halfway through the breeding period. So by that stage of breeding, she's only going to have about 1 chance in mid-July to be ready to breed before we either finish our AI or we finish the breeding period by taking away the bulls after our, say, 10 weeks of breeding has occurred. So the late calving cow generally only has about 1 option, 1 chance to actually get pregnant here at the end of breeding season, whereas our good quality cows that calve at the start, they have usually 3 opportunities. The first week, week 3, generally in the first 3 weeks, week 6 to 9, week 1 to 3, week 3 to 6, and week 6 to 9. So they have 3 opportunities to get pregnant, which is going to give them a very good chance, compared to the later calving cow, which only has 1 shot. And generally, if she's late calving here, she's not going to be as genetically fertile as our earlier calving cows, which also gives her a negative and a setback to actually getting pregnant. So she's likely to fall through the system, end up as an empty cow. Empty cows cost us money, and we want to try and avoid that as much as possible. One very good option that we have available to us on beef farms to actually get our cows pregnant as fast as possible is fixed time AI. So this is a synchronization program. It can be done with heifers, with mature cows. There's various different programs available, but the fixed time AI is very good because we can utilize a 2-shot sync program, which will bring all the eligible cows ready to conceive into heat. They'll all come into heat on the same day. So this is a very labour efficient system where we only need to inject the cows twice, and then we can line up our vet or AI technician to come in, breed all eligible cows on the same day, and then we're hoping that 65-70% of those are going to get pregnant to the AI on the same day. So that gets us back into how we achieve the 50% calving in 2 weeks. So our goal in all of this is calve at the right time, that we have enough grass to feed our cows so our cows can recover very fast. They're on a rising plane of nutrition, they can build up body reserves, get fat again. have one strong heat here, a second strong heat, and then by the time we get around to breeding season, they're in their third heat, they're ready to go, they're going to get pregnant. If we calve outside of the ideal window, if we calve too early, calve too late, basically everything goes against us. And from a nutritional and a heat and weather point of view, labour point of view, everything's against us. And then we're putting more pressure on our cows, especially these later calving cows here at the end of May, to get back into heat and cycling and get pregnant.